He was her foster father for years, but during the adoption hearing she told this to the judge. The marble halls of the downtown courthouse buzzed with anticipation on a bright Tuesday morning. Courtroom 302, usually reserved for routine family court proceedings, was filled to capacity. Social workers, teachers, friends, and even curious courthouse staff had squeezed into the wooden benches, all drawn by the story of Daniel Cooper and his foster daughter Mia. 15-year-old Mia sat in the front row, her dark hair neatly braided and her navy blue dress carefully chosen for this special day. She'd been in the foster system since she was 7, bouncing from home to home until, 5 years ago, she'd found herself at Daniel Cooper's doorstep. Now, after years of building trust, creating memories, and becoming a real family, they were finally here for her adoption hearing. Daniel sat beside her, looking both nervous and proud in his charcoal gray suit. At 42, he cut an impressive figure, tall, athletic, with kind eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. Right now, though, those eyes were focused intently on Judge Martinez as she entered the courtroom. "All rise," the bailiff announced, his voice echoing through the packed room. "The Honorable Judge Elena Martinez presiding." The judge took her seat, her reading glasses perched on the edge of her nose as she reviewed the papers before her. She was known for her fairness and compassion, having overseen hundreds of adoptions throughout her career. But something about this case made her pause, taking an extra moment to study the documents. "Good morning," Judge Martinez began, her voice warm but authoritative. "We're here today for the adoption of minor Mia Bennett by her foster father, Daniel Cooper. This is a special day, one that marks the legal recognition of a bond that has clearly already formed." The judge looked up, her eyes meeting Mia's. "Mia, you've been in Mr. Cooper's care for 5 years now. According to the reports I have here, you've excelled in school, participated in numerous extracurricular activities, and have shown remarkable progress in your emotional well-being. Would you say that's accurate?" Mia nodded, then remembered to speak aloud. "Yes, Your Honor," she replied, her voice steady despite her nerves. "Very well," Judge Martinez continued. "As you're over 12 years old, the law requires your consent for this adoption to proceed. This is your chance to speak freely. Do you wish to be adopted by Mr. Cooper?" The courtroom fell silent. This was supposed to be the easy part, a simple yes that would make official what everyone already knew in their hearts. Daniel reached over and gave Mia's hand a reassuring squeeze, expecting to hear the word they'd both been waiting for. But Mia's response caught everyone off guard. She stood up slowly, her hands trembling slightly as she smoothed her dress. "Your Honor," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "I need to tell the court something first." A murmur of surprise rippled through the courtroom. Daniel's hand, still extended where Mia had been sitting, froze in midair. Judge Martinez leaned forward, intrigued by this unexpected turn of events. "Something happened 3 weeks ago," Mia continued, her voice growing stronger. "I discovered something about Daniel, something he never told me. Something that changes everything about our story." Daniel's face showed genuine confusion. In all their years together, through all their conversations and shared moments, he couldn't imagine what Mia might have discovered that would make her hesitate now, at this crucial moment. Judge Martinez nodded encouragingly. "Go ahead, Mia. This is your time to speak." Mia turned to look at Daniel, tears welling in her eyes. The love in her gaze was unmistakable, but there was something else too, a mix of admiration and sadness that made the entire courtroom lean forward in their seats. "Before I say yes or no to this adoption," Mia declared, her voice now clear and determined, "I think everyone here needs to know exactly who Daniel Cooper is, and what he gave up to become my father." The judge set down her papers, giving Mia her full attention. Daniel shifted uncomfortably in his seat, a flicker of recognition crossing his face as he began to realize what Mia might have discovered. The courtroom remained absolutely silent, the usual shuffling of papers and whispered conversations completely ceased. Even the usual hum of the air conditioning seemed to have quieted, as if the room itself was holding its breath, waiting to hear what this young girl had to say about the man who wanted to become her father. No one could have predicted the story that was about to unfold, a tale of sacrifice, hidden dreams, and the true meaning of family that would leave not a dry eye in the courtroom. As Mia took a deep breath to begin her revelation, even Judge Martinez, who had presided over countless adoption cases, sensed that she was about to hear something extraordinary. Mia took a deep breath, steadying herself as she faced the crowded courtroom. The truths she was about to reveal had weighed heavily on her heart for the past 3 weeks, ever since she discovered what Daniel had given up to become her father. "Your Honor," she began, her voice growing stronger with each word. "What I'm about to tell you isn't just about today's adoption. It's about a sacrifice that changed both our lives forever." She reached into her bag and pulled out a worn magazine, its pages carefully preserved despite its age. 5 years ago, before I came into his life, Daniel wasn't just a tennis coach. He was on the verge of becoming one of the most influential figures in professional sports. The magazine's cover showed a younger Daniel standing in front of a cutting-edge training facility. The headline read, "Revolutionary Virtual Reality Tennis Training System Set to Transform Professional Sports." Mia held it up for the court to see. Daniel had spent years developing a virtual reality system that could analyze and perfect a player's technique in real time. Major athletes, Olympic trainers, and professional coaches were all amazed by what it could do. It wasn't just another training tool, it was going to revolutionize how athletes learned and improved their skills. She turned to look at Daniel, whose eyes were fixed on the magazine he hadn't seen in years. The biggest sports technology company in the world, Global Sports International, wanted to make him their head of innovation. They offered him a $20 million contract, plus royalties on every system sold. He was supposed to move to their headquarters in Singapore, lead a team of developers, and change the future of sports training forever. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Even Judge Martinez leaned forward, intrigued by this revelation. The contract was scheduled to be signed on June 16, 2019. Mia continued, her voice catching slightly. "The exact day I was brought to his house as a foster child." She pulled out another document, the original contract still unsigned. "I was supposed to be temporary. Just another case, another foster kid staying for a few weeks until they found a permanent placement. I was angry, scared, and determined to make him send me away, just like everyone else had." Tears began rolling down her cheeks as she remembered that day. "But when I arrived, something happened that I didn't understand until now. Daniel was supposed to be at the contract signing. The company executives were waiting. His flight to Singapore was booked for that evening. Everything he'd worked for was right there, waiting for him to claim it." She looked at Daniel, who sat with tears streaming down his face. Instead, he chose to stay with a broken, scared 10-year-old girl who didn't even want to be there. Who wouldn't speak to him, wouldn't eat the food he made, wouldn't even look him in the eye. He gave up everything, his dream, his career, his future, because he saw something in me that even I couldn't see in myself, hope. Mia's voice grew stronger as she continued. "The company tried to change his mind. They offered to find another foster home for me, to delay the contract by a few weeks. But Daniel knew what that would mean, another rejection, another adult choosing something else over me. So he made a choice that changed both our lives forever." She pulled out one final piece of paper, her hands trembling slightly. "This is the letter he wrote declining the contract. It says, 'While I appreciate the tremendous opportunity, I've recently become responsible for a young person who needs stability more than I need success. I cannot in good conscience choose personal gain over a child's well-being.'" The courtroom was absolutely silent now, every person hanging on Mia's words. He gave up being a millionaire. He gave up changing the sport he loved. He gave up everything he'd worked for, everything he'd dreamed of. And he did it for a child he'd known for less than a day. Daniel stood up, his voice rough with emotion. "Mia, sweetheart, you weren't supposed to find out about this. I never wanted you to carry this weight." But Mia wasn't finished. "That's exactly why I had to tell this story today. Because for 5 years, you've carried this sacrifice alone. You never told me, never hinted at what you gave up. You wanted me to grow up without feeling guilty, without feeling like I owed you anything. She turned back to Judge Martinez. Your Honor, when I found these documents in our attic 3 weeks ago, I was devastated. I confronted Daniel about it, showing him everything I'd discovered. Do you know what he said? The judge shook her head, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. He just smiled, hugged me, and said, "You were more important." Just like that, as if giving up the biggest opportunity of his life was the easiest decision he'd ever made. The impact of Mia's words resonated through the courtroom. Social workers wiped away tears, understanding the magnitude of what Daniel had done. Teachers who had watched Mia blossom over the years nodded in understanding. Even the stern-faced bailiff seemed moved by the revelation. But before Judge Martinez could respond, the courtroom doors opened. A distinguished-looking man in an expensive suit entered, followed by a woman pushing herself in a wheelchair. Their arrival caused an immediate stir, and Daniel's face showed recognition tinged with surprise. The story of sacrifice was about to take an unexpected turn, one that would challenge everything Mia thought she knew about her father's choice that day 5 years ago. 3 weeks before the adoption hearing, on a rainy Saturday morning, 15-year-old Mia was rummaging through their attic. Daniel had asked her to find some old tennis equipment for the youth program they were starting at the local community center. The attic was dusty and dimly lit, with boxes stacked haphazardly against the sloping walls. "It should be in one of the blue bins," Daniel called up from below. "I think it's near the Christmas decorations." Mia pushed aside a box of holiday ornaments, her hand brushing against something that didn't feel like a plastic storage bin. It was an old leather briefcase, cracked with age and secured with a brass clasp that had turned green with time. She wouldn't have given it a second thought, except for the business card that had fallen from its side pocket. "Global Sports International, revolutionizing athletic training." Curiosity got the better of her. The clasp opened with a soft click, revealing a stack of newspapers and magazines. The top one caught her eye immediately. It was from a prestigious sports technology journal, dated June 2019. There, on the cover, was a younger Daniel, standing proudly next to what looked like a sophisticated virtual reality setup. Her hands trembled as she read the headline. "Revolutionary VR tennis training system set to transform professional sports." The article spoke of Daniel Cooper as a visionary, a genius who had developed technology that would change athletic training forever. The journalist described demonstrations where professional players were amazed by the system's capabilities. "Did you find it?" Daniel's voice drifted up from below. "Not yet," Mia called back, her heart racing as she continued reading. Deeper in the briefcase, she found more articles, contracts, and finally, a small notebook with Project Journal written on its cover. The last entry was dated June 16, 2019, the very day she had arrived at Daniel's house as a scared, angry 10-year-old. Her whole body went cold as she read the entry. "Meeting with GSI board in 1 hour. Contract ready to sign. $20 million, plus royalties. Everything I've worked for these past 5 years is about to pay off. But the social worker just called, new foster placement arriving today. Temporary, they say. Just a few weeks. But something about this girl's file." The entry ended there, as if Daniel had been interrupted mid-thought. Mia remembered that day vividly. She'd arrived at his house around noon, clutching her small backpack of belongings, determined not to get attached to yet another temporary home. What she found next made her gasp. It was the actual contract, unsigned, with a post-it note still attached. "Mr. Cooper, signed by 2 p.m. today or deal expires. Singapore office expecting you tomorrow morning. R. Chin, CEO. Singapore. $20 million. A revolutionary career." All scheduled for the exact day she had entered his life. When she confronted Daniel about her discovery, she expected, well, she wasn't sure what she expected. Regret, maybe? Resentment. Instead, he just looked at her with those kind eyes of his and said 5 simple words. "You were more important." Just like that. As if giving up a life-changing opportunity was the most natural thing in the world. "But why didn't you ever tell me?" she had demanded, tears streaming down her face. Daniel had pulled her close then, his voice soft but firm. Because you needed to heal, to grow, to learn to trust again. You didn't need the weight of my choices on your shoulders. Your job was to be a kid, not to feel responsible for my decisions. Over the next few days, Mia had dug deeper, piecing together the full story. She discovered that Daniel had not only given up the initial contract but had repeatedly declined offers to revive the project over the years. Each time, the reason was the same: it would have meant leaving her, disrupting the stability he'd worked so hard to create. She found letters from various companies, all expressing disbelief that he would abandon such promising technology. One executive had written, "Think about the legacy you're giving up." But Daniel had chosen a different kind of legacy, one built on love rather than achievement. The most revealing piece was a letter he'd written but never sent, dated on her first Christmas with him. "Everyone keeps asking if I regret my choice. They don't understand. When Mia smiled at me today, really smiled, for the first time I knew. Some dreams you choose, and some dreams choose you. She wasn't just a fork in my road, she was my road home." Daniel had systematically hidden every trace of his almost success. He'd removed awards from walls, declined interviews, and steered conversations away from his past achievements. All to ensure that Mia would never feel like she had to earn his love or carry the burden of his sacrifice. The courtroom fell silent as she finished explaining how she'd discovered the truth. Judge Martinez leaned forward, clearly moved by the story. But before she could speak, the doors at the back of the courtroom opened. A woman in an elegant business suit strode in, her presence commanding immediate attention. "Your Honor," she announced, "I'm Sarah Chin, Chief Innovation Officer at Global Sports International. And there's something about Daniel's invention that everyone here needs to know." Sarah Chen's heels clicked against the marble floor as she made her way to the front of the courtroom. Her presence commanded attention, but it was the thick folder in her hands that drew everyone's eyes. Behind her, Richard Chen stood up, a knowing smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Your Honor," Sarah began. "5 years ago, my husband Richard was the CEO who offered Daniel that life-changing contract. Today, I'm here because history has a strange way of coming full circle." She opened the folder, pulling out a document bearing the official seal of the U.S. Patent Office. 3 weeks ago, exactly when Mia discovered Daniel's secret, something else happened. The patent for his virtual reality training system was finally approved. Daniel's head snapped up, his eyes wide with surprise. He'd filed that patent application years ago, before Mia had entered his life, then forgotten about it in the whirlwind of becoming a father. "But that's not all," Sarah continued, her voice carrying a note of excitement. "In the 5 years since Daniel walked away, no one has managed to develop anything close to his system's capabilities. The technology he created is still years ahead of its time." She turned to face Daniel directly. "The market for sports training technology has exploded. What was worth $20 million 5 years ago? It's now valued at over $200 million. And Global Sports International wants to make you an offer that's bigger than anything we've proposed before." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Judge Martinez leaned forward, intrigued. Mia's hand found Daniel's, squeezing it tightly. "We want to establish a new division," Sarah explained, "focused entirely on virtual reality sports training. We're prepared to make you the Chief Innovation Officer, with full creative control and a significant ownership stake." She paused, letting the magnitude of the offer sink in. "The position would be based at our new research center in Tokyo." The word, Tokyo, fell like a stone in the quiet courtroom. Mia's grip on Daniel's hand loosened slightly. "The facility is already built," Sarah continued, pulling out photographs of a sleek, modern building. "We have a team of 50 engineers ready to work under your direction. The contract includes everything: relocation costs, housing, private schooling." She glanced at Mia, then back to Daniel. "But there's a catch." Richard Chen stepped forward, taking over from his wife. "The project needs to begin immediately. We're looking at relocation within the next 2 weeks. The adoption," he paused, choosing his words carefully, "will need to be delayed until the initial setup phase is complete. We're talking about 6 to 8 months." Mia felt her world tilting sideways. 6 to 8 months. After 5 years of building a family, after finally reaching this moment, they were being asked to put it all on hold. Of course, Sarah added quickly. We'd arrange for Mia to visit during school breaks. And once the system is operational, she could join you permanently in Tokyo. The international school there is excellent. Daniel hadn't moved, hadn't spoken. His face was unreadable as he stared at the contract Sarah had placed before him. Your Honor, Richard spoke again. We understand this is unusual timing. But this opportunity, it's more than just money. Daniel's system could revolutionize how athletes train worldwide. It could make sports training accessible to kids who can't afford private coaches. It could help injured players recover faster, safer. He turned to Mia. Your father's invention could change millions of lives. And you, Mia, you'd be part of that legacy. The international experience, the chance to see your father's dream finally come true, it's an incredible opportunity for both of you. Judge Martinez cleared her throat. Mr. Cooper, would you like to respond to this offer? Daniel stood slowly, his voice steady but emotional. 5 years ago, I made a choice between success and a scared little girl who needed a home. It was the easiest hard decision I've ever made. He looked at Mia, his eyes full of love. But now... Take it, Mia interrupted, her voice barely a whisper. The words seemed to cost her physical pain to speak. You have to take it, Dad. Mia, no, Daniel began, but she cut him off. You gave up everything for me once, she said, standing to face him. I can't let you do it again. 8 months, we can wait 8 months. I'm not that scared little girl anymore. I'm stronger now, because of you. Because you taught me what real love looks like. Sarah Chin stepped forward eagerly, contract in hand. We'll need an answer today. The team in Tokyo is waiting. The courtroom held its breath. Daniel looked from the contract to Mia, then to the judge. Your Honor, I. But before he could finish, the courtroom doors burst open once again. A young woman in a wheelchair rolled in, her athletic build and determined expression immediately drawing all eyes. Behind her, a group of teenagers in tennis uniforms filed in, each wearing shirts with Cooper Community Tennis Program printed on the back. I'm sorry we're late, the woman announced. But there's something everyone needs to know before Daniel makes his decision. She wheeled herself to the front of the courtroom, positioning herself between Daniel and the Chens. My name is Maria Santos, and 5 years ago, I was the junior tennis champion. Daniel was supposed to train in Singapore. The twist in the story had just taken another unexpected turn, and as Maria Santos prepared to speak, the atmosphere in the courtroom crackled with anticipation. Whatever she had to say, it was clear that the choice between Tokyo and home was about to become even more complicated. Maria Santos wheeled herself closer to the judge's bench, her presence commanding attention despite her seated position. The teenagers in tennis uniforms lined the back of the courtroom, their young faces reflecting a mix of determination and support. Your Honor, Maria began, her voice clear and confident. When Daniel gave up the contract in Singapore 5 years ago, he didn't just change Mia's life. He changed all of ours. She gestured to the teenagers behind her. These kids? They're all from the Cooper Community Tennis Program. The program Daniel started instead of going to Tokyo. Mia looked at the teens, really seeing them for the first time. She recognized many of them from around the neighborhood, kids from foster homes, from struggling families, from situations not unlike her own. I was supposed to be Daniel's first success story, Maria continued. A rising star who would prove his training system worked. But fate had other plans. She touched the wheels of her chair. 3 days before Daniel was supposed to fly to Singapore, I had the accident that put me in this chair. The doctors said I'd never play tennis again. The courtroom was silent as Maria rolled forward, positioning herself between Daniel and the Chens. But Daniel? He didn't just walk away from the contract that day. After choosing to stay for Mia, he started something even more important than a virtual reality system. He created a real-world program that gave kids like us a chance. One of the teenagers stepped forward, a tall boy with determined eyes. "I was failing school before I joined Mr. Cooper's program," he said. "My mom was working 3 jobs, and I was angry at the world. But Coach Cooper taught me more than just tennis. He taught me discipline, respect, and how to believe in myself. Now I'm heading to college on a tennis scholarship." Another teenager spoke up, her voice trembling with emotion. "My brother and I were in foster care, just like Mia. The program gave us stability when everything else was chaos. Mr. Cooper didn't just teach us sports, he showed us what it means to have someone who never gives up on you." Sarah Chin stepped forward, contract still in hand. "This is exactly why we need Daniel's system in Tokyo. Think of how many more kids he could help with proper funding and resources." But Maria shook her head. "With all due respect, Mrs. Chin, you're missing the point. Daniel's greatest invention wasn't the virtual reality system. It was this community he built. These kids don't need perfect virtual training, they need what he gives them every day: presence, patience, and unwavering support." Mia stood up, tears streaming down her face. "But he deserves this chance," she argued. "He gave up everything for me. I can't let him sacrifice his dreams again." Daniel, who had been quiet throughout this exchange, finally spoke. "Mia, sweetheart, look at me." His voice was gentle but firm. "I need to tell you something I should have said 5 years ago." He walked to the center of the courtroom, standing between his daughter and the contract that promised so much. "When I chose you that day, it wasn't a sacrifice. It was a revelation. I thought my dream was to revolutionize tennis training, to change the sport forever. But sometimes life shows you that your real dream was hiding in plain sight." He turned to face the Chens. "That virtual reality system? It was designed to help players perfect their form, to achieve technical excellence. But these past 5 years taught me something more valuable. Tennis, like life, isn't just about perfect technique. It's about resilience, about getting back up when you fall, about having people in your corner who believe in you." Richard Chin stepped forward. "Daniel, think about the impact you could have globally. This is your chance to help millions." "Am I helping millions now?" Daniel asked, gesturing to the teenagers. "No. But I'm helping Jamie there get into college. I'm helping Maria coach despite her wheelchair. I'm helping Tommy and Sarah stay connected to their foster siblings through our weekend programs." He smiled at Mia. "And most importantly, I'm helping my daughter grow into an amazing young woman who's willing to sacrifice her own happiness for what she thinks is my dream." He picked up the contract from the table. "This is a remarkable offer, and 5 years ago, it would have been everything I wanted." He handed it back to Sarah Chin. "But I already made my choice years ago. My dream isn't in Tokyo. It's right here." The Chens exchanged glances. "The offer won't come again," Richard warned. "I know," Daniel replied. "And I'm okay with that." He turned to Judge Martinez. "Your Honor, if it's all right with you and Mia, I'd like to proceed with the adoption. Because there's something everyone here needs to understand. Success isn't always measured in millions of dollars or global impact. Sometimes it's measured in the smile of a child who finally feels safe, in the triumph of a teenager who discovers their worth, in the simple joy of being exactly where you're meant to be." Mia launched herself into Daniel's arms, sobbing. "Are you sure?" she whispered. "Really sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," he replied, holding her tight. "Besides, look around. This is what we built together, not just a family, but a community. That's worth more than any contract." Maria wheeled closer, reaching out to take both their hands. "And we're not done building yet. Daniel, remember that adaptation of your training system we've been working on? The one designed for players with disabilities?" Daniel's eyes widened as he realized what Maria was suggesting. The teenagers in the back of the courtroom began to grin, and even Judge Martinez leaned forward with interest. The next chapter of their story was about to unfold, but this time, they would write it together, not in Tokyo, not with millions of dollars, but right here at home, where their journey had begun 5 years ago with a simple choice to stay. The courtroom was silent as Mia stepped forward, her eyes glistening with tears but her voice steady and clear. "Your Honor," she began, looking first at Judge Martinez and then at Daniel. "You asked me at the beginning of this hearing if I wanted to be adopted by Daniel Cooper. I'd like to answer that question now." She turned to face the entire courtroom, the Chens with their life-changing contract, Maria Santos in her wheelchair, the teenagers from the tennis program, and most importantly, the man who had chosen her over everything else. "5 years ago, Daniel gave up a dream for me," Mia said. "Today, I finally understood the full weight of that sacrifice. But I also learned something even more important. Sometimes when you give up one dream, you make room for an even bigger one." She walked over to where Daniel stood and took his hand. "You gave up everything for me. Now I choose you." Her voice grew stronger with each word. "Not because I feel guilty, not because I owe you, but because you showed me what real love looks like. You taught me that family isn't about blood or papers or legal ceremonies. It's about choosing each other, every single day." Richard Chen stepped forward one last time. "The offer still stands, Daniel. Think about what you're giving up." But Mia wasn't finished. "Actually, Mr. Chen, I have a counter-proposal." She nodded to Maria, who wheeled forward with a laptop. "While you were talking about Tokyo, we've been working on something right here." Maria opened the laptop, revealing a 3D model of what looked like a modified version of Daniel's original training system. "Daniel's been helping me adapt his technology for adaptive sports," she explained. "We've been testing it at the community center for the past 6 months." One of the teenagers from the tennis program, Tommy, stepped forward. "Show them the video, Maria." The laptop screen displayed footage of wheelchair tennis players using a simplified version of Daniel's system. The players wore basic VR headsets, but instead of the complex setup the original design required, this version was streamlined, portable, and specifically designed for athletes with disabilities. "We call it Tennis for All," Mia announced proudly. "And it's not just for tennis anymore. We've adapted it for basketball, swimming, and track. The best part? We built it using basic components that any community center can afford." Daniel stared at the screen in amazement. "You did this? When?" "Every Saturday morning when you thought I was at swim practice," Mia admitted with a small smile. "Maria and the team helped me understand your original designs. We simplified everything, made it accessible. Because that's what you taught us, that everyone deserves a chance to play, to compete, to belong." Sarah Chen moved closer to examine the footage. "This is remarkable. The simplified interface, the adaptive controls, it's completely different from the original system, but in some ways, it's even better. That's because it wasn't built for profit," Maria added. "It was built for people. For kids who never thought they'd play sports again. For families who can't afford private coaching. For communities that need hope more than they need high-tech solutions." Judge Martinez, who had been watching everything unfold, finally spoke. "Mr. and Mrs. Chen, I believe this is where you make a different kind of offer." Richard and Sarah exchanged looks. "Daniel," Sarah said slowly, "what if instead of you coming to Tokyo, we brought Tokyo here?" "What do you mean?" Daniel asked. "Global Sports International has been looking to expand its community outreach," Richard explained. "What if we funded the expansion of your program? Not just the virtual reality system, but the entire Cooper Community Tennis Program. We could help you build similar programs in communities across the country. Across the world," Sarah added. "But this time you stay here. You and Mia together, building something that could help millions while keeping your family intact." Daniel looked at Mia, his eyes filled with pride and love. "What do you think, kiddo? Want to build a dream together?" "I think we already have," Mia replied, squeezing his hand. "We just need to make it official." She turned to Judge Martinez. "Your Honor, I'm ready to answer your question now. Yes, I want to be adopted by Daniel Cooper. Because he's not just the father I needed, he's the father I choose." Judge Martinez smiled warmly. "Then by the power vested in me by the state, I hereby declare the adoption complete. Daniel Cooper, Mia Cooper, you are now, legally and forever, father and daughter. The gavel's bang was drowned out by applause and cheers. The teenagers from the tennis program rushed forward, enveloping Mia and Daniel in a group hug. Maria wiped tears from her eyes as she watched her mentor and friend finally complete his journey to fatherhood. Richard Chin approached with a new contract, not the Tokyo offer, but something better, funding for the Cooper Community Sports Initiative, a nationwide program that would bring adaptive sports technology and training to communities that needed it most. As Daniel signed this new contract, one that wouldn't take him away from his family, Mia watched with pride. 5 years ago, a scared little girl had walked into the home of a man who gave up everything for her. Today, that same girl, now a confident young woman, stood beside her father as they prepared to change lives together. "Ready for our next adventure?" Daniel asked, putting his arm around his daughter's shoulders. Mia looked around the courtroom at their extended family, Maria, the tennis kids, even the Chens, and smiled. "We're already on it, Dad. We're already on it." They walked out of the courtroom that day not just as legal family, but as partners in a dream bigger than either of them had imagined alone. Because sometimes the best dreams aren't the ones we plan, they're the ones we discover when we're brave enough to choose love over ambition, family over fortune, and the simple joy of being exactly where we're meant to be.